Any other questions? All right, we'll move on to the next item, the equity information update.
So something that I do weekly board updates to our board, but in the summer it's been bi-weekly, and something I updated the board about would be good to share with the public here as well too. So PSBA had sent out a position paper on critical race theory, and I think it's important to share with everybody that there's no intention to have that in public schools. There never really was an intention for that to happen in public schools. I've been an educator for almost 30 years now at this point, and I had to look up what that was. So when this all started happening, it's not part of our vernacular. It isn't. It's a theory that's taught in law school to look at just how the legal system has created inequities. And that's an interesting argument for students who are in their 20s after they've graduated college to pursue that as they're looking at law. That's not something that would ever become part of public school education. Many boards have taken positions on that, but it's nothing that would really come up. However, we do try and be culturally responsive to students. We pay attention to what their needs may be. If we have students who are homeless, if we have students who are English language learners, students with special needs, students that have some economic disadvantages, we know those things impact education, and we try and move those barriers out of the way and support those students as best as we can. That's nothing new, and that will continue to happen, and it's the right thing to do, because the best way that kids can change the trajectory of sometimes their futures that they were born into is to get an education. And that's what we believe in. So that won't be something that'll ever be coming up for us. And we certainly won't be seeing that, I think, in any public schools. It would be really shocking if that occurred. The CSIU also has an equity committee. And as I said, equity issues are not new, but we're trying to take a look at how we can first provide some professional development in all of these different areas that probably soon will have a mandate, as the Department of Ed already has a website dedicated to it, their Equity Hub. And again, it's nothing really new. It's practices that we've been looking at data and student achievement data, discipline data, and seeing, well, what is it that we can do differently to make sure that we're supporting students and making sure that they have the access to things that have barriers perhaps in front of it, because they just don't have some of the same advantages or have some of the same experiences within their homes, or that's just how they're born. So we're taking a look at that, and it's just something that's coming, online. It's not a very large committee. I suspect that this will begin with a lot of professional development for administrators and then faculty and staff. So my goal is to be able to continue to update the community on where we are with that, so that what might be the conversation out there in the world someplace else, to know that that's not necessarily what our administration and our teaching staff are looking to do.
All right. Board President's report, I'm going to skip tonight. With that, we'll move on to citizens' comments to the board on non-agenda items. John, do we have any?
Here. Nope, no additional comments from the internet.
Okay. Yes.
Critical race theory was not on the agenda, although the equity report was. But since it was brought up, I'd like to speak to it for a second. Ms. Pollenchuk, I have deep respect for you, but I would ask that you broaden your understanding of what is meant by community members when they ask you if critical race theory is being taught in this school district or around the country. The Pennsylvania School Board Association is not the de facto definer of what our citizens mean when they say critical race theory. And while you were speaking, I went and did a search on psba.org for what they're doing. And I read here, school boards are adopt are asked to adopt resolution supporting the development of an anti-racist climate. Okay, and then when you go to the resolution, you read things like, the subsequent protests from the George Floyd violence have shined a spotlight on the harmful effects of racism and inequality. However, we must understand that racism is systemic and it is unconsciously and consciously rooted in our institutions, policies, and practices. That is the core basis of critical race theory. Unconscious bias, that's what it's about. And so I agree that you're not teaching the legal scholarese of what critical race theory is. But when we as citizens are coming to you, we're hearing the buzzwords of critical race theory. It's not equality, it's equity. It's not being non-racist, it's being anti-racist. And so I really ask that you broaden your horizons on that before you make a de facto decision that critical race theory is not coming here, because equity is here and equity is part of critical race theory. Thank you.
Any other comments? Hearing none, I'll open the floor for a motion for adjournment.
Second.
Moved by Mrs. Brow, seconded by Dr. Unzicker Pizarro. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Meeting adjourned.